Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Hey, we had a speaker nominee. Well, then we didn't. Interesting way that and now the old guy coming back with a new scheme. Well, Republicans in chaos. What else is new? Just what the wealth class loves. Broken government led by our Republican friends. Because, hey, the more status quo we are, the more broken our government is, the less we're going to hold corporate America responsible for all the destruction and the poor wages, and the more we're not going to tax the very wealthy. So, hey, look, the best money democracy can buy, the best government democracy can buy, our corporate money going into destroying our government. But here's the thing, workers are having enough. And you know, we tell these stories all the time. Today, the UAW put another 5,000 General Motors workers on the picket line, this time in Arlington, Texas. And again, I think we're going to see more of this as this strike continues. Eventually, who knows where this goes? It's been over 6 weeks now. It's time to come to an agreement, Big Three. How much do you have to lose? And this is the part that's amazing to me, because how much do you have to lose before you go, it's worth making a reasonable deal? How much do you have to lose? And this is one of those things that's always amazing to me when you see these kind of strikes happen. And I'm always taken by the one hospital up in, I think it was Buffalo, where they spent like $10 million trying to break the strike, where just giving the nurses everything that their little hearts could have ever dreamed of would have cost them $5 million. You go, oh, what sense does that make? Well, it's all about power. It's all about control. You'll get what you get and you won't throw a fit. You'll get what we give you and you'll be back in your place. You'll be happy to have a job. You won't make any waves. Yeah, that's where we are. And look, I'm glad people have had enough. I'm glad people are finally stepping up and saying, you know what? Enough is enough already. There's only so far you can push people. And, you know, I was just talking about this with a friend. I was going, you know, because we were talking about, you know, the wages from when we were younger to where they are now. And look, when I was younger, work made your life better. You got a job, life got better. You got a good job, you were able to pay your rent, you were able to pay you got a reasonable car to drive, you had money to go out on Friday nights, your life got better. And you got that union job, your life got really, really better. And that was my story. You know, got a crummy job getting out of high school, went into college, still had a crummy job. I got that union job, and it's like, whoa, that's money. In fact, you know, dollar for dollar, I had more disposable income, you know, when I was, 21, 22 than I have when I'm 56. Because the wages were much different. The distribution of wealth in this country, go back to the late 80s, was much different. The working class got much more of the wealth that their labor created. And the why I think this is important is I think people are finally waking up to that fact. And I know we see the signs, McDonald's is hiring for, $18 an hour. Yeah, they probably should be, because they are in other countries. But I stopped by a gas station today, and this is one of those things that doesn't happen often. I've seen, I know it's happening a lot in this country, but this is the first that I've seen it in a while. I stopped in to get some gas and grab a drink, and the woman behind the counter had to probably be in her early to mid 20s. You could see just the look in her face of just, she didn't know what to do. She was so frustrated. This customer was giving her the business, and I don't know what was going on, but I saw his hands flailing around and her just with this dead look on her face. Like, you know what? I've heard this too many times. There's nothing I can do about it. Why are you yelling at me? That kind of thing. And she just turned around. It looked like she used the F word and just basically goes, I'm leaving. And she walked out. And I'm like, wow, I guess good on her. I hope the best for her. So I go up and I pay for my drink, and I ask the person, I go, what was that all about? He goes, well, third time that's happened this month. Because people are finally getting tired of dealing with people. Because I couldn't do the job. There's no way I would put up with an angry person. And here's the thing. Most of the time, what the customer who's supposed to be, they believe they're always right, what they beat up on the clerk or the person doing the job is nothing that person can change. They have literally no power to make that situation better. And even if they bring the supervisor in, they probably have very little power to make you happy or right. And this got me thinking today that, maybe this is what it's going to take. We've gone through the Great Resignation. They say we're in a great reset where workers are doing this. I'm finally tired of the constant BS and the poverty level wages. And my mind was going through this place today as I'm going, well, this place probably pays, I don't know, $15 to $17 an hour, maybe. No health care, no retirement, no vacation, no sick time, none of that stuff. But just, an okay, I guess, wage. Something you could, maybe just be poor working at. Not your life's getting any better, but you're existing, you're surviving, you're scraping together an existence, paying your rent, paying for the jalopy car, putting some crummy food on the table, but life isn't getting better. And this is the key point for most working people. They get up, they go through the grind, they bust their behinds, and life doesn't get better. They don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They don't see the prize at the end of the road. There's no reward at the end of this. And this is why working people, I think this is why we're fed up. And as I've said, look, most people in this country, they have jobs that keep them poor, just surviving, just getting by, while corporate America, now this is a giant corporation, while corporate America is raking in enormous profits, doing massive stock buybacks, paying their CEO outrageous sums. And there they are, the people on the front lines actually doing the work, who can't afford to go to the doctor, probably have medical debt like 100 million people in this country, don't have the ability to take vacations or sick time when they're sick or when their kids get sick. So they're just worried about one bump in the road that could send their lives into chaos. But here they are. They got to show up with a smile on their face and deal with someone who, just like them, is in a crummy job that's not making the bills, and they're ticked off about the price of stuff, and it's not a good recipe. It is a horrible situation. And this is what happens when you have really two classes of people, the very, very rich and everybody else. And everybody else, I'm thinking, struggling. And, George Carlin always talks about, you've got the rich who pay none of the taxes, take all of the profits, the middle class who does all the work and pays all the taxes, and then the poor who are there to scare the you-know-what out of the middle class, so they keep showing up to these crummy jobs. And, this is one of those things, again, we, by policy, keep people desperate and poor. And, you've seen homeless people on the side of the road, and I've heard this a lot from, well, why don't they get a job? And you go, well, because it's not that easy to just go get a job, especially if you're homeless. And, oh, by the way, big giant secret here, and I know this is going to be a shock to some, but the majority of those people who are homeless, they've got jobs. They got those crappy jobs, those crummy jobs that don't have any way to get out of poverty. So when I saw this, my mind is in this whole, how do we fix this? Because I'm a man, and I'm like, how do we fix this? How do we change this dynamic? And I keep coming back to, maybe if we started organizing these retail workers, because you know what? I go back to my grandmother. My grandmother, who in the 1960s helped organize a union in her workplace. They had good wages, family-sustaining wages. Single mothers were the majority of the workforce in that back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Single mothers earned a wage that they could live on, got health care, got retirement security, got vacations. When my grandmother retired in 1980, she was making just about $8 a little over $8 an hour, had 6 weeks vacation, had full eye, full dental, full medical, and a retirement, so that when she retired, she was able to live in her home her final years with dignity and respect. That's the thing that's amazing to me. And why can't we demand that now? Why can't we say enough of this dynamic where we work and slave and do all of this stuff to make a handful of people outrageously wealthy? Why don't we talk about how do we distribute this wealth in a way that makes everybody's lives better, especially the people who are working for a living? How come we're not doing that? How come we're not moving in that direction? And as I say, you want to reunite this country? Let's reunionize this country. Let's get people back in the workplace fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, so no worker is in a position to where they go up, show up to work 40 hours a week, busting their behind, and still live in desperation and poverty. How about we do that? I know, but Rick, we're more concerned about who goes to what bathroom and who wears a dress, and we're concerned about that stuff. It's ridiculous. It's stupid, and we should stop it. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got a lot to get to. Oh, lots of craziness today and lots of entertainment. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, I come back to, where we've been and all of this. And I think it's important that we wake up to the reality that working people have finally, hopefully had enough. Let's go to Steve in Chicago on line 2. Steve, how you doing?
Fine.
You just hung up on Steve. You got to put them on hold. Let's go to line 1. Let's see who we got here. TJ, how are we doing?
Hey, Rick. TJ Sandell from the Great Lakes Building Trades in Erie.
What's on your mind, TJ?
How you doing?
I'm good.
Well, the answer is organizing. I mean, that's what has to happen, and I think that these Gen Z kids that are coming up now are seeing what the reality is in the temperature of this country as far as jobs go. So they're realizing with Starbucks and all these big corporations that are taking advantage of them, they're seeing that organizing works.
No, and that's important. And this is what I keep saying, TJ, that if we want to reunite this country, if we wanted to do the positive things, we've got to organize them. And somehow we just lost TJ for some reason. I appreciate the call, TJ. We'll try it again. We got Steve on line 2, right? Yeah. Let's go to Steve on line 2. Steve, how are you?
Fine, thank you. So I wanted to make a couple of points. And one, people need to understand, as you've rightly pointed out, most of the people who we consider to be homeless are in fact working. And the unofficial standard is if you're paying more than 30% of what you make every year for housing, then you're housing challenged. And a lot of people have to resolve that by ending up in the street, sleeping in their car, sleeping on someone's couch. And we count them as homeless. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. There are plenty of people who we consider to be homeless who are working every day. Beyond that, then, what we're seeing is sort of the typical corporate backlash against, what we've seen as a reinvigoration of the union movement in this country. So from UPS to the United Auto Workers to SAG-AFTRA and so many other unions that are standing up finally after generations of being stomped upon. Well, they're standing up, and already you're starting to see the backlash from these corporations that are sending out these messages through think tanks and through conservative media. Oh, if the prices for what you're paying is going up, you can blame the unions. It's their fault. And it's so typical, we've seen this in cycle after cycle in this country.
And yet the reality is you go, and I used to love talking about the fact that when the Jamestown automotive plant was open, the Chevy Suburban that was built there and in Mexico, depending on where it was built, didn't matter. The price was still the same. So if you were paying a union worker in Janesville, Wisconsin, a living wage with health care and retirement and all of those things, it didn't matter in the price because you were paying a portion of that to the worker in Mexico. The corporation still made out, and the consumer got screwed, and the worker got screwed in this country when they closed the plant. So for me, I think it's about time people are waking up to these realities. I just wish it didn't. I wish we didn't have to go through the pain and the struggle that we're going to go through.
Yeah, I mean, at one time in this country, people sort of understood the notion of why they were paying more. So okay, well, Henry Ford decides to pay X amount to his workers. Okay, so I'm paying this amount for the car. Okay, Henry Ford's making out like a bandit, but still, he's paying his workers a decent wage. It wasn't because he was an altruist. It was because he had some common sense with regard to how businesses function, something that doesn't exist all that much in the modern world. But today, as you point out, when I'm a BMW guy, so I love BMWs. That's what I tend to buy and drive. But, my BMW can be, it's not made in Germany anymore with the highest standards of quality. A lot of them are made in Mexico and made other places. But you know what? They don't cost any less.
Exactly.
So, you're rightfully pointing this out. I mean, we've outsourced a lot of this stuff to the cheapest possible labor in the world. And by the way, it's not only the case that we have done it to just one country. Every generation or so, when a country's wages tend to go up too high. So in other words, now China has become too expensive to make a lot of the things that we want. So we move on to somewhere else, like Vietnam. And then we'll move on to another country. We'll constantly move on to whatever is the lowest common denominator, the race to the bottom. Now, we've had that in this country, but there's also a race to the bottom in terms of, where you make things internationally.
No, exactly. I appreciate the thought, Steve. Thanks so much. And look, he's exactly right. Corporate America, they don't care about this country. They run ads. We're all in for America. But they're more than happy to source their things from overseas and ship them back here and assemble it here so they can say, made in America. And we buy it. I mean, the sad reality is we need better policymakers. Let's go to line 3. We got Kurt on line 3. Kurt, how are we doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm sorry to hear that you're going to be going off the air, hopefully temporarily on December 1st. I enjoy listening to you every night.
Well, this is a positive thing, Kurt. We're looking at the fact that we're moving to TV. We're making the jump to video. This is going to be a good thing, I think.
And it'll be free speech TV, and people, you can get it online if you have a Roku as well, if you don't have satellite. But anyway, it comes down to education. We are not taught labor education in this country like we used to be. It was part of our labor history. We are not taught labor history. It was part of our history that we were taught prior to a certain time. And that's a lot of the problem.
No, I don't know that I'm on board completely with that, because I go back to my schooling. The only thing I really learned about labor education was about the Molly Maguires, and I learned they were all criminals.
Right.
When you go back and you go, no, they weren't criminals. These were just people who were desperate. They were working in deplorable conditions. If you've ever taken a coal mine tour, and these are people who are basically fighting for their lives. I think we do need labor education in the school. I'm 100% with you on that.
Right. And you know what? I'll say something. The closest in this generation that we can come to those deplorable labor situations would be when we were having quote-unquote essential workers who were heroes at the time during COVID, had to go to the hospitals, had to drive the public buses, had to go to the meat packaging plants, all that stuff, and risk their health and their family's health. And for what? To get pay cuts. I mean, my goodness, I was making bonuses every month prior to April of 2020. And then we had to have a department meeting where they said, because of the COVID situation, we're cutting the monthly bonuses indefinitely. I think the boss thought it was easier to say that because everyone's getting a $1,200 check. And I'm hearing people say, I'm just grateful I have a job. I'm just grateful I'm working right now, that sort of thing. And it shouldn't have been that way. And to make it worse was about 6 weeks later, the boss announces that they hired a new vice president of operations for that company. Talk about a slap in the face to your workers. So by December, I'm thinking, I haven't missed a day. I never got COVID, knock on wood. I never missed a day. I was going to a hospital every day during that COVID situation. I need to get something out of this. And so I actually wrote a proposal to get a raise. And I think I'm the only person that could probably in that company get away with saying this. I actually imposed FDR's Four Freedoms speech in my proposal for why I needed a raise. So, which I couldn't believe that it worked. But what it was is I knew I needed at least $1.50 an hour more. I went in asking for $1.75, knowing I wasn't going to get $1.75. At the end of the day, I actually ended up getting $1.48. I decided I'm not going to cry over 2 cents, but I got close to what I wanted.
Good for you. Most people are not that fortunate.
Right, and then you know what? I still have not missed a day for COVID or anything like that. And I'm still going to the hospital and seeing sick people and trying to get them Medicaid or get them what they need as far as getting their hospital bills paid. But what I'm getting at is, I don't know where I'm getting at with this. I'm starting to ramble like Donald Trump incoherently here. But what I'm getting at is it shouldn't be this way. And, you're right. The workers do need to start standing up. But, it comes down to what we've been conditioned to believe is as long as the rich get everything they want, the poor get everything they want, nothing's going to change because the middle class do not have the time nor the funds to go out and start marching. And I guess we're going to need to find the time and the funds to do it.
No, that's why I think what's going on with the UAW is so important. Why I think when you're the Teamsters and UPS, why that fight was so important. That you're raising expectations that a job should make lives better. And I've been saying this for all 18 years that I've been doing this program. Every time a new president comes in, my goal for them is to return reward to work. That a job is going to make your life better, not worse, not keep you in poverty, not keep you marching in place, but actually making lives better. And I'm hoping we get back to that place.
And I'm fortunate. My wife and I are fortunate. We're able to afford to purchase a home. Well, we're buying the home right now, but we also got in under a great 3.9% interest rate when we did it too. Have you seen what the cost of rent is anymore in this country?
No. We bought a house because my daughter couldn't afford rent anywhere. The sad reality is there's nothing out there that's affordable. For people starting out, young families. We've got real problems, and I come back to a lot of it is policy driven. We should be building low-cost housing like they did back in the 50s when my grandparents came back from World War II. We should be doing a lot of things.
And that was what Harry Truman, and that's what Harry Truman fought for back in 1948. And he called the Republicans out on this, saying they say they're for the American home, but not public housing. They say they're for people getting health care, but not for everybody. They say they're for the American way of life, just so long as it doesn't spread to all the folks. Yeah,
exactly.
Sort of stuff.
You were spot on, Kurt. Appreciate the call, man. Always good stuff. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1936. That was the day Londoners referred to as the Battle of Cable Street. By some accounts, as many as 250,000 trade unionists, radicals, and anti-fascist fighters joined together to protest Sir Oswald Mosley's British Union of Fascists. The fascists planned to march in black shirt uniform through London's then heavily Irish and Jewish working class East End neighborhood. Mosley's BUF BUF scapegoated Jews for the economic crisis brought on by the Great Depression. He had drawn thousands to rallies in previous years, and now looked to impose fascist dominance over the most vulnerable of Londoners. Bill Fishman, a Jewish activist and son of an immigrant tailor who was there on that day, recollected, quote, "I was moved to see the bearded Jews and Irish Catholic dockers standing up to stop Mosley. I shall never forget that as long as I live. How working class people could get together to oppose the evil of fascism." The Metropolitan Police stationed as many as 10,000 policemen to keep counter-protesters from directly confronting the BUF. But the anti-fascists physically blocked every possible path into the East End. They constructed barricades along Cable Street made from paving stones and household furniture. Women emptied garbage bags and chamber pots from windows onto the fascists. Marbles were thrown in the direction of the fascists and their protectors. Seamen pulled out their lorries and turned them on their sides. Tram drivers parked and abandoned their streetcars in the middle of the street to prevent the fascists from continuing their march. Protesters chanted the slogan of the Spanish Civil War, "No pasarán," or "They shall not pass." And that day, the fascists did not pass. They were stopped by the power of working people.
There is nothing quite as pitiful as whiny billionaires, and the whiniest of all is the richest, Elon Musk. This self-entitled bully runs over anyone in his way, then whines when they protest. Elon's latest high-pitched screech was prompted by public demands that his profiteering schemes obey clean water and safety regulations. He owns a corporation named, believe it or not, the Boring Company, an underground tunneling venture based in Bastrop, Texas, digging out tons of soil, chemicals, and contaminated groundwater. But where to put all the waste? "I'll just dump the stuff in the nearby Colorado River," said Lord Musk. "Lots of stuff, 140,000 gallons of wastewater per day. But that river is our main water source," said local people. "You'll need to comply with water treatment and disposal rules." "Outrageous," whined Elon, maniacally squealing that construction is becoming practically illegal in America. So he proceeded to dump his waste without a permit. Then he encountered Chap Ambrose, a boring neighbor and former Musk admirer. Chap began asking questions and getting nothing but evasions, lies, and disrespect. Musk was messing with Texas, so Ambrose rallied local opposition through a website he named Keep Bastrop Boring. With a drone, he videoed Musk's expanding industrial mess, broadcasting the videos throughout the area. He filed actions with county, state, and national regulatory authorities and got his state senator to hold a hearing attended by hundreds of residents in this rural county. Musk can bamboozle powerful officials, but not feisty people like Chap, who recently ridiculed the pouty billionaire. Development remains legal in Bastrop, Ambrose told him, but what is illegal is polluting Texas water. You're making this way harder than it has to be. This is Jim Hightower saying the fight goes on, and I'm betting on Chap.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So over the last couple of days, gotten a lot of response over Jon Stewart not being able to do his program. And you know, as I said from the beginning, I give Stewart the utmost credit for standing up and saying, look, we're going to talk about China. We're going to talk about AI. Don't care what your corporate agenda is. And this, again, is the problem with corporate-controlled media. The fact that we've got 6 corporations that control 90% of what we see, hear, and read. It's these things that I don't think gets enough attention. Had Stewart been a go-along, get-along guy, had he been, I don't know, on one of the F channels or one of those over there, we may have never heard this. This would have just gone under the radar, and he would have followed along like a good minion. But I give him credit for standing up and saying, nope, not going to do it. And here to share some thoughts on maybe my next guest shares my enthusiasm and my love of Jon Stewart, especially on this. That's why I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, great to be with you. And yes, I am a big Jon Stewart fan. You bet.
And I think this, for me, especially this is one of the main reasons. This is a guy who lives his values. He walks the walk, yes, while talking the talk. That to me that's the important thing.
Yeah, I mean, he does. Jon Stewart, first of all, he's funny. He's relevant. He cares deeply about humanity in very tangible ways, and also exploring really complex issues or issues that don't get a lot of attention. And he's not afraid to dive in deep, even if it's going to mean getting his hands dirty. And so, what really struck me, Rick, and is the fact, and I think it sounds like your listeners probably know this, that his show on Apple is done. Right. I mean, and they had extraordinary episodes about a lot of issues, but what little we know about the departure, one of it is because he probably wanted to tackle something very serious about China, and Apple, with all of its dependency on China for manufacturing and for buying some phones as well, and being able to continue to sell Apple products in China was probably mortified.
Yeah. Especially the AI component as well. I mean, Apple, I'm sure they've got a plan for AI. Yeah. So, with China, where their money comes from, and AI, their control mechanism, they don't want anybody knowing anything about this. So, of course, shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah, which is obviously, this is the danger of all of these different entities kind of owning streaming or media channels, is that their ability to have either tacit or direct kind of censorship over content is something that we shouldn't underestimate the impact or the chilling effect that could have. And so it is my hope is that Jon Stewart can find another home, and that he can do some of this work. But yeah, good for him for stepping away, because I'm sure from a financial, from a prestige perspective, there were all sorts of things he had to consider. Wasn't easy to do, obviously. Not everybody's in a position to do that, but he did the right thing. And Tim Cook and the folks that are running the programming for Apple Plus TV really screwed it up here. Yeah. But I mean, they do this consistently with respect to China. They bend over backwards with respect to China, and then they make demands of our own government, which is something that really gets my blood boiling, Rick.
No, I mean, this is why I love Jon Stewart. Again, a guy who stands on his values. He could have done the John Cena and learned Mandarin to apologize for having the audacity to actually want to talk about things that are wrong in China, but he didn't, and I give him credit for that.
Yeah, he did, and so there's not a lot of folk like that. I think Keanu Reeves has done some stuff in the past, and Richard Gere did a long time ago, and there's others along the way. Brad Pitt, who have made some noise about China, and good for all of those folks, but it's few and far between in pop culture and among celebrities to do this, just because of the threats, the very credible threats that China or countries that have an interest in operating there will make. So, but I think the reason why it's just interesting to talk about in general is that this is a real problem, and we're going to see more of this. And so, I think that we have to find a way as a U.S. government to have the backs of people who want to speak out about this and make sure they have the channels to do that, because censorship, whether it's in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party or in one of our largest media and tech companies, is a dangerous thing.
No, I absolutely agree, and this leads us to my next topic, because there was an interesting There was an interesting opinion over at the Washington Post that the era of cheap is over. And a lot of that has to do, I think, with China, especially on the labor front, as we're starting to say, no, we want to be sourcing things at home. We want to talk about domestic production for domestic consumption, thing that I've been very, very, very high on. So, the end of cheap labor is over. The end of cheap money is over. What kind of an economy are we going to have once that realization sets in?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like by the way, I hope your listeners get a chance to look at this column. It's by Rana Farouar, who is writes an opinion column for the Financial Times, and she's been published elsewhere. Very, very smart about this stuff, cares deeply about these issues. I've had a number of good conversations with her. But the point she makes is exactly that: is that Wall Street ran our economy, and as a result, we had cheap money. There was artificially cheap energy in a lot of different ways, and cheap labor because of all the exploitation and the tax on unions here at home, and the exploitation abroad made possible by many of our trade and economic policies, and that there is now a reversal of that underway, and it's going to cause gripes at first, and you hear this, I do too, like gas costs too much, or housing costs too much, or food costs. There's lots of reasons for that, but ultimately, and I think this is Rhoda's point, is that we're going to restore some balance our economy. It's going to be more Main Street and working class focused, and we're going to focus on having good wages and maybe buying products that are not as disposable, right? And that are made a little closer to home.
And made a little bit better.
Yeah, and made a little better. So ultimately, yeah, you're not going to go out and buy, 20 plastic widgets that you're going to throw away the next day. You might only buy one or two things, but they're going to last for a long time. And they're going to be made by workers who are earning a decent wage, who will then be able to buy things of their own.
Yep. No,
and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a virtuous idea, but I'm glad that she presented it, and I hope people are paying attention.
I know a guy who replaces HVAC units, and he says, we're going into homes now because of Biden's policy and the rebates that come out of it. We're going into homes with much more fuel efficient, much more efficient, heat pumps. And we're going in and we're taking out, units that are 30, 35 years old, and we're putting in ones that their lifespan is going to be about 7, 8 years long because of the cheap stuff that it's made with, and this idea of planned obsolescence. Now he's like, look, you're going to save some money because they're much more efficient, going to cost you less in bills, but you're going to be replacing the units more often. So it's for the family, it's going to be about the same. But it's it's better for the environment. It's better for the electric use, but it's still not making lives better.
Yeah. There is that sweet spot of being able to do the energy efficiency and also having the high quality durable good. And so I think that I think that we need to find that. And this is one of the things, you probably hear this too. I mean, one of the most frequent comments I get when people talk about American made is like, man, I wish more of my tools and fasteners were American made, because you can tell if it's something that's made in China, it just it just tears right apart or doesn't last. And so yeah, this idea of having a disposable, cheap economy. Time to put that, once and for all in the trash can, just this one time, and then move on to something that looks, feels a little better, and is creating good jobs in the process. Really.
No, this is one of those things where it's interesting you brought up the tools, because I was just having this conversation with my son. I've got a Craftsman ratchet set that I've had since I was his age. I mean, it's literally 35 years old, almost 40, and I've never broken a socket. We've had 3 of the cheap Chinese made ones, the knockoff ones, bust, in the time that we've used, the short period that we've used them. So it's perfect to your point. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott Paul. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. AmericanManufacturing.org is their website. I got to get your thoughts on what's going on the world stage. We obviously, Congress is completely broken. The president has asked for money to give to Ukraine, Taiwan and Israel. Clearly, no Congress, no House to move that through. But I keep hearing people saying, well, we're just giving all this money away. And I'm not hearing what Mitch McConnell said, is that the majority of that money that we're going to be spending is going to be spent right here at home, rebuilding our arsenal of democracy, if you will, while we're giving the stuff that we're not using, the obsolete stuff. We're giving that to Ukraine, and that I'm curious your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how often I agree with Mitch McConnell. I've never counted up the times, but I do agree with him on this. I think he's absolutely right, and this is the thing, and I think this is the problem, is that you have to explain this and sell this, because people hear foreign aid or foreign entanglement, they're like, oh no, we don't want anything to do with that. But the truth is that there is a lot of value in doing this, and he and others rightfully point out that a lot of these resources will go to ensuring that we have the capability to produce armaments, whether it's missiles, artillery shells, ammunition, at the rate that we need to keep pace, so that those resupply efforts to Ukraine can continue for as long as they need to. And here's the thing that we discovered, is that if, God forbid, we are called into action for something that's beyond a very limited encounter somewhere, whether it's the Middle East or the Pacific, we're going to run out of stuff real fast. And I think that's an alarming discovery to a lot of folks, that we need to have the ability to have a broader industrial base that can produce this pretty rapidly. And I'm not talking about like a massive arms buildup or anything like that, but this is just to keep pace with a tempo that we would need if we're engaged in a conflict like that. And the reason why you need that capability is a deterrence effect, is that the bad actors are less likely to strike if they think that we're going to kick their butts. Right?
No, as I've said a million times, I'm a Teddy Roosevelt guy on this. I'm a firm believer of you walk softly, carry a big stick. Don't mess with us, but if you do, I'm going to go all Paul doctrine on you. Because I believe in that as well, because I think that's the best deterrent. I may be wrong, but I think that is the best deterrent, knowing that, look, don't screw with us, because hellfire is coming. But I don't think we should be bullying and doing the other things that some have said we do. But we're not involved in these conflicts. We're simply helping people to defend themselves, and I'm all on board with that. Yeah, I absolutely agree with all of that, and that we need to, project that type of leadership, and also demonstrate that kind of deterrence, so that we see fewer of these conflicts in the future rather than more of them. And I think that these are resolved successfully, swiftly, with as little loss of life as possible, but that we don't let the bullies or the terrorists get away with it. No, absolutely. Right? And the last question I've got for you, and this is obviously a huge question, much bigger than a minute answer. But I look at what's going on in Ukraine, and the fear, and the stories that are out there. The fear is that if Putin's allowed to take over Ukraine, China is not far from a decision to going after Taiwan, which could, one, upset the entire world balance, and two, could make things a whole lot more expensive and more difficult for us here at home. So the idea being, maybe support Ukraine so they don't fall, and show the world that we're going to support our allies, so that maybe we don't allow China to go in and take over Taiwan.
Yeah, Rick, you're right. It would take more than a minute, but we can get through the biggest points right here. You're absolutely right. And the thing about China, and we need to remember this, is that Russia is a tiny. Russia is not a threat to global stability. It is to regional stability, as Ukraine knows, and we need to counter and to crush that. China is a threat to global stability if it decides to project and to take over Taiwan by force, which is not the will of the people there right now. And so we need to set that line, and we need to have that deterrence power. We need to make sure that we have allies on board, and we need to make sure that China would know that there would be tremendous costs if it did something if it tried to do something by force. And that's the best deterrent we have right now. And so having that capability, having that outlook is going to be very important as we look ahead.
Yeah, and there's a lot on this, and I'm sure you'll come back and you'll keep us up to date. But as always, Scott, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing your expertise. Thanks so much.
All right back to you, Rick. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Our good friend Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. If you want to check out the work that they do, they also do an incredible podcast on manufacturing, which I highly suggest. Hope you'll check that out as well. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people come to talk.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1940. That was the day that the federally mandated 40-hour work week went into effect for U.S. workers. The 40-hour week had been passed as part of the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. Making 5 days of 8 hours work the national standard had long been a top goal for labor. For decades, union members organized, demonstrated, went on strike, and even died for the right to work 8 hours. Labor argued that reducing the long, unregulated hours of toil was a matter of workers' health and safety. It was also a matter of dignity. A more reasonable work week would give workers the time to spend with their families, to pursue other interests, and to have a full life outside of the grinding schedule demanded by many bosses. Before the turn of the 20th century, the 8-hour day movement declared 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will as their motto. In 1886, nationwide rallies and strikes for 8 hours took place on May 1st. Today, May Day is celebrated as a workers' holiday around the world in remembrance of that struggle. In 1888, the American Federation of Labor took up the cause, and the Carpenters Union became the standard bearer for the 8-hour day. 10 years later, the United Mine Workers Union members won the 8-hour workday. In 1916, the Adamson Act made 8 hours the standard for interstate railroad workers. A decade after that, Ford Motor Company, a leader in U.S. industry, established the 40-hour work week. Each of these victories were a step along the way to making the 8-hour day a reality and the law of the land. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Let's quick go to the phone lines. We got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are you today?
Semi-insane?
All right, that's a step forward.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good or not. So what I wanted to say was this. We were talking, or you all were talking, about the planned obsolescence. I can't talk tonight. Anyways, about things breaking easily.
Right.
So I remember when I was a kid, we had, one of the old televisions, and a tube would go wrong with it every now and then. Dad would take it to the TV shop. They'd throw in a new tube. That thing lasted for 20-some years, 25 years maybe. It was still working when Dad finally bought a new one, a bigger one. A few years ago, my stepson bought my husband for a birthday present one of the big 55-inch screen TVs. It lasted exactly, and I'm not lying to you, 6 months. He had bought it at Walmart. It was one of the ONN ones. ONN is made in Vietnam, but it's actually an offshoot of a Chinese company.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So I tried to get them because it had supposedly had a 1-year warranty on it. I fought with them for over 3 months, the ONN people, not Walmart, sending send me a back scan of this. I mean, for 3 months, sending all kind of pictures and everything else. Finally, I got disgusted, and I sent an email directly to the Walmart president, and I just, anyways, they ended up replacing it.
Oh, good. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. So you must be a good.
Apparently,
you must be one of those people who doggedly goes after them.
Well, I do. I used to have a friend that said I was like a dog with a bone, and I would not give up. But
there you go.
The thing is, we're buying this cheap Chinese junk, and we might not even know it's from China because they're expanding. They're in Vietnam. They're here. They're there. With all their little subsidiary companies. So, when we had American-made products, they lasted forever. Now you're lucky if you can get 5 years out of something.
I'm with you. Appreciate it, Alice. Thanks so much. No, I mean, and on that front, I go back to, like washing machines, dryers. My grandmother had three her entire married life, and my grandparents were married, 60 years. They had 3 washing machines and 3 dryers. That's it, 3 in their entire lives. I've gone through a couple of them, and that's a problem. That's a problem with how things are built today. And as this person I know who does HVAC work said, look, it's all cheap. The guts in it are all cheap plastic that break down, and they're made that way. They're made to break down because it's good for profitability, keeps you coming back, keeps you buying stuff, but they aren't very cheap. That is the problem. Good news coming out of California. I am thrilled to see this. As the state of California has revoked the permit for this company called Cruise. They're the people who do the autonomous vehicles, the ones who supposedly were sending these around the Bay Area, crashing into things, causing traffic nightmares, all kinds of stuff. The state said the California DMV notified Cruise that the department is suspending Cruise's autonomous vehicle deployment and driverless testing permits effective immediately. The DMV has provided the Cruise with the steps needed to apply to reinstate its suspended permits. Now, here's the thing. I'm sorry, the autonomous vehicles, while they may be the future down the road somewhere, they're not the now. And until they're perfect in testing, because you're only going to have a small number of them in testing. If they're not perfect with 1 or 2, when you put 1,000 or 10,000, you got problems. And look, I have probably one of the best internet systems you can get, and yet sometimes my streaming it buffers. Sometimes it stops. And now imagine if you're tooling down the road at 60 miles an hour in a car that you don't have control over, and the web stream just goes, I'm gonna take a break. I'm tired. What does that mean? That means chaos. That means trouble. And look, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not against a future of driverless cars, because look, there's going to be a point in my lifetime, it's probably going to come, I don't know, relatively a lot sooner than I want it to be, where I'm not going to be able to drive myself. And once you lose mobility as an older person, life gets worse. So the idea of autonomous cars, to me, is an interesting one and a good one. Going to get people to the doctor's appointments, going to do hopefully a lot of really good stuff. Technology's not there yet. And this idea that we're going to have autonomous taxis and autonomous trucks and buses and all this stuff, I'm sorry. No, not yet. The technology's not there. So good on the state of California for saying, hey, you know what? You've had these crashes, you've had all this stuff. We're cutting you out. Now, originally, like a month ago, I think it was like a month ago, or a couple of months, maybe 2 months, they said you're going to have to cut your fleet in half because it's too much. And now they've completely pulled this, which again I think is important. And for right now, a step in the right direction. Just want to hear your thoughts. You pro autonomous vehicles? Is this a good thing? Is this the future? Or should we not fiddle with this? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got a lot to get to, a lot to talk about. Can take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
As sea level rise makes more coastal properties chronically flooded, those coastal property values are projected to plummet.
Rising sea levels threaten Florida property values and its economy. New study confirms hurricanes really are getting more intense due to global warming. Plus,
it's shocking, in fact.
Melting of the huge West Antarctic ice sheet may have already passed the point of no return.
All of those great stories and more, including super fog, straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
And I know what you're thinking, another depressing environment story.
Yep. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, a tragic story out of Louisiana, but a bizarre one, in fact. Super fog blamed in Louisiana for a highway crash that killed at least 7 people?
Yes, unfortunately, at least 7 people were killed and 25 injured in a massive pileup of 158 vehicles outside of New Orleans on Monday due to a super fog.
What the hell is a super fog? It sounds like a late 70s, early 80s soft rock band.
Well, the National Weather Service says the foul smoke from coastal marsh peat fires combined with dense fog to create an unusually dense super fog.
Well, what are peat fires?
Well, peat is basically rotting wet vegetation, and it can self-ignite after long periods of hot temperatures, which Louisiana has been roasted by hot temperatures all summer and into fall.
So it's likely this is going to be yet another part of our climate crisis?
Yes, and it's probably something that's not going to get better with more global warming.
And it's definitely something I haven't heard of until today. So add it to the list. What else you got for us today, Des?
Well, October 2023 is on track to be the hottest October ever recorded by a large margin.
Great.
Since record-keeping began in the mid-1800s. That's according to a new analysis by the nonprofit firm Carbon Brief. That also means plentiful ocean heat energy to fuel storms. In the Pacific Ocean, Hurricane Norma joined the growing list of rapidly intensifying hurricanes, rocketing to a Category 4 storm before hitting Mexico's west coast over the weekend as a Category 1. Newly formed Tropical Storm Otis is also on track in the Pacific to become the 4th named storm to hit Mexico's west coast just this month alone.
Wow, yeah, they got hit twice in 2 days just a week or so ago.
A new study confirms that Atlantic hurricanes are getting stronger and faster due to warming of the oceans driven by man-made climate change. The analysis found that storms are now twice as likely to rapidly intensify within 24 hours into powerful and catastrophic major hurricanes of Category 3 or higher than they did 20 years ago.
And that's something that we've also seen a lot of so far this year.
Yep, and it matters because rapid intensification makes it harder to forecast a storm's track and gives vulnerable communities little time to prepare, especially for mass evacuations. The study also found there have been more Atlantic storms in the last few decades than in the 1970s and 1980s.
Huh, I wonder why.
In Antarctica, faster melting of the West Antarctic ice sheet is likely now unavoidable, a new study warns, suggesting that future sea level rise may be greater than previously projected. That's even if governments succeed in achieving their promised emissions cuts. The study projects the rate of ocean warming and Antarctica's ice melt are both likely to triple due to humanity's ongoing greenhouse gas emissions. However, the researchers said reaching emissions targets will help to stabilize the ice sheet from further melting after 2100.
Good luck to us.
In Florida, an ominous warning from a new Florida State University study on the impact of rising seas on Florida's economy. The study found that 1 million Florida properties are projected to see chronic flooding in coming decades. Property taxes from those specific properties account for a third of local operating revenue in towns across most of the state. Worse, local planners and managers aren't aware of the coming financial impacts of climate change. In an interview with NPR, co-author Professor William Butler said the study is a wake-up call for a looming budget crisis for towns and and the state.
We're not forecasting a future. What we're doing is letting people get ahead of that future, we hope, so that local governments can start to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to be preparing ourselves.
So when this happens, this is going to slam the tax base, which is going to slam the state of Florida. And I guess Ron DeSantis is not going out of his way to let his own constituents know about it.
Doesn't appear to be so.
Well, that's what being a climate denier is all about. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks, Mastodons, and sites still known as Twitter at Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on Wednesday, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro is going to be in Washington, D.C. for a Center for American Progress event titled Delivering the Goods, the Role of Government. And look, you know, Josh Shapiro, I think, has done a fantastic job of governor in my state of Pennsylvania. When you had that collapse of the I-95 bridge, immediately got to the front of it and did what I thought was an incredibly smart thing, putting it all online so people can see the work being done. In fact, something that I had suggested a long time before that Joe Biden do. In fact, along with the giant 20-foot cardboard cutouts of that stupid thing going, Biden did this, to put at every work site and every project done by the infrastructure bill, also putting it online. In the format of that, him pointing the finger saying, I did that. But it's going to be interesting to see what Governor Shapiro has to say, because, look, you know, this was government in action. And I know my right-wing Republican friends, the government can't do anything. Well, they got that bridge open right quick and the economy moving and all of that. And here to share some thoughts on, well, the summit, and what Josh Shapiro did on 95. I've asked Kevin DeGood to come talk with us. Kevin is the director of the Inclusive Economy Project there at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is the website if you want to take a look at what they do. Kevin, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, you know, I'm looking at, you know, Governor Shapiro coming to D.C. and, you know, talking about the role of government. This I-95 thing is kind of, in my view, kind of a big deal because I think he did it exactly the way, picture perfect way that we should deal with these kind of crises.
Absolutely. You know, there's no way to plan really in advance for these kinds of freak incidents. And in this case, you had an unforeseeable bridge collapse. But the governor did just an absolutely amazing job and worked in very close partnership with Secretary Pete Buttigieg. They both released emergency funding and a bridge that, you know, most people thought was going to be months and months out of commission, horribly disrupting commuters, the economy. Obviously, everybody knows how critically important I-95 is to the entire Northeast corridor economy. That bridge, at least a temporary structure, was back up within 12 days. And I think that the last time I checked, it looked like the final full replacement bridge was going to be done in 2024, which again is just an incredible testament to how quickly things moved and how everybody pulled in the same direction.
And it's amazing that, you know, we don't hear an awful lot about that because that is government in action. I mean, that is, you know, our government coming together and doing what needs to be done to get things moving. But that's not how we can run all of government. I mean, we should have, you know, ways of making sure that bridges get replaced so they don't collapse. Now, this is not one of those scenarios that caught on fire, gas truck blew up, all that. But, you know, we've seen bridges collapse. We've seen things that should have been replaced that we haven't gotten to. We should be doing better on that front.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, really what I think drove the Biden administration and Congress to pass the infrastructure bill in November of 2021, right? This was a core pledge on the campaign trail in the 2020 election. He said, we've talked about infrastructure for a lot of years. This is something that I promised to deliver on. And they did. And so this is a historic $1.2 trillion investment. The transportation section is enormous. There's $350 billion for highways. There's a full $20 billion of that dedicated just to bridge repair. There's a whole bunch of money in there for EV charging, because we know there's this immensely important transition we need to make with our surface transportation fleet from gas and diesel powered vehicles to clean power, zero emissions vehicles. Let's see, there's $92 billion for transit. There's $66 billion for passenger rail, $25 billion for airports. There's money, there's more than $50 billion for water infrastructure, including the replacement of all lead service lines that are still in the country. It's just an incredible accomplishment. And what we're starting to see here, particularly this year, is those dollars hit the system. And one of the consequences of that major investment is that we have now had a run of unemployment being below 4% for 20 months in a row.
Right.
And that is the longest stretch of time with unemployment below 4% in the last 50 years. It's an incredible accomplishment. It's a testament to Bidenomics and this piece of legislation.
And also, I mean, this is good for the economy in that we're going to be replacing some of the stuff that's probably been around 50, 60, 70 years. And, also the modernization is going to help the economy be more efficient. And the stuff that we should have been doing for decades prior. This is the thing that I get into arguments with people with. We've been living on investments from past generations. This is the first time, at least in my lifetime, that we're making a massive investment in the future and saying, hey, we're going to leave something for my kids when I'm gone that's worth inheriting.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's really the thing to understand. What's so amazing about infrastructure investments is that when you do them right, they pay dividends, not for years, but for decades, for generations. And so we know that the dollars that are in the bipartisan infrastructure law are going to pay dividends for a long time. And right off the bat, what that means is job creation. So in the immediate, we get the benefit of strong middle-class jobs that can support a family, that can allow people to save for retirement, put a child through college. But in the long run, we have this set of very productive assets that are going to help our economy be more productive and more efficient.
Yeah, and what I love to get off of my little rant when you're talking about infrastructure improvements and the jobs that are created with it, a good number of those are union jobs, prevailing wage jobs, done with project labor agreements, which ensures that dollars stay local. They go into the Main Street economy, which helps the florist and the restaurant owner and the donut shop and all of the mom and pops along Main Street. So it not only benefits the people getting those jobs, it benefits the whole local economy where these projects are being built. So I don't often use that win-win frame, but this is a giant win-win. But I still find it interesting that, and I don't know if it's the right wing of this country is just against investing or they're just against Biden, but I keep hearing them saying, well, this is too much. We can't afford this kind of stuff, which is a bit crazy.
I mean, it is if you consider that our national economic production, our gross domestic product is $26 trillion a year, and this is 1.2 trillion over 5 years on the bill. And for the transportation section, it's a couple $100 billion. So this is something that's absolutely affordable, and it's affordable not just because of its comparison to our overall GDP, but it's affordable because it's productive, right? Throwing tax cuts at multinational corporations is not particularly productive. Those are expenditures on the balance sheet. Those are things that can add to the budget deficit, but they don't add to our overall productivity, and it doesn't put money in the pocket of working Americans. These infrastructure investments are productive, and they do put money in people's pockets, and they help stimulate hiring for good middle-class jobs. So there's a big difference.
No, I'm with you. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show with Kevin DeGood. He's the Director of Inclusive Economy at the Center for American Progress. You want to check out their website, AmericanProgress.org. That's where you go to find their work. Now, you talked about the EV charging stations. You talked about carbon reduction programs. You talk a lot about climate that's in this. And again, I go back to the opposition who doesn't believe in climate change. So to them, these kind of investments are wasteful, especially when you're talking about EV charging investments, because, the gas and oil industry, they certainly don't seem to want it. What do you say to the person who goes, the free market should decide, Kevin, government shouldn't be putting their thumb on the scale?
Right. It's a good question. It's a fair question. It's important to remember that our tax code is not neutral when it comes to energy, right? I mean, these are energy companies, oil and gas companies are huge economic players. They spend an absolute fortune every year on lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and they have carved up our tax code to their benefit. So it isn't as though when we're looking at clean energy alternatives to the oil and gas industry that somehow it was this magical level playing field before, and now the Biden administration has made it unlevel. No, what we have done is we have thrown money at the oil and gas industry, whether that's through accelerated depreciation, whether it's through various kinds of write-offs, whether it's through producing the workforce that then they take up to use, that people were educated with grants from the federal government to become engineers and things like that. Like we have subsidized this industry for a long time, not to mention that the harms from their core product, which is to say the pollution, the particulate matter, the toxic chemicals, the carbon dioxide emissions, right? All of those have been burned, but none of that cost has been rolled into the cost of the product, right? So we have, in a sense, at a society level, at a global level, we have subsidized and underwritten this industry by not requiring them to account for the harms that the pollution from their product causes. So it's not really accurate to say that somehow it was a level playing field before and now it's not.
Last line of questioning I've got for you, because again, we've heard people say that this is just too much. We can't afford it. We got a $33 trillion debt. I'm sure you've heard about this. I look at this. Was a $1.2 trillion investment in this. I've read the American Society of Civil Engineers report that the last time I checked, the last time they came out with a report, and correct me if I'm wrong, they were saying just to get to even, not the grade A, top of the line kind of thing. They're talking 4.8 trillion. So this seems like it's a huge amount. It's a good step, but we're not done.
Right, and the I-95, collapse, it highlights what happens when you don't invest. So I think one of my frustrations when we have this conversation about how much should we spend, how much can we afford, is we don't talk about what the alternative scenario is. And the alternative scenario of underinvestment is when we have systems fail, often catastrophically and very often unpredictably. And the harms from that, both to individuals and also to the economy, are enormous. We can think about the terrible toxic poisoning from lead leaching into drinking water in Michigan a few years back, right? That was because of chronic underinvestment in the water system and making a rash decision to change source waters without appropriate study and without appropriate learning for how to do that, right? So we know that the harms from underinvestment are enormous. So we have to think about this, not just what are we spending, but what problems are we avoiding by making these smart investments.
Yeah, what the alternative to not taking action is. No, I think you're spot on, right. Again, I think we need to be doing much more. A huge Biden credit for a huge step forward. But as a country, I think we got to prepare ourselves for much more. But Kevin, I appreciate your thoughts and your expertise. Good stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rick. Happy to be here.
You as well. Kevin DeGood, he is the inclusive economy guy there at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, the website if you want to take a look at that. I'm going to take a quick break, right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Wow, what a fun day we've had today. It looks like, the very best people, the Trump folks. It looks like, and I hate to make light of this, but it does kind of look like they're flipping like pancakes. I got to tell you, the very best people, they are changing, and they are looking for an exit. And I look at, the folks so far. Mark Meadows, the last chief of staff that Trump had, he's got immunity. So he's going to have to tell the tale of what he saw, heard, keep himself out of the slammer and out of the clink. And then there's Jenna Ellis, who Jenna, I got to tell you, I'm kind of amazed at the argument that she makes. It is quite remarkable, but the argument that she makes, and I want to play the clip of her, doing her little spiel in court today. Here's Jenna Ellis, doing the plea thing.
To aiding and abetting false statements in writings under accusation 23 SC 190514.
Guilty.
And is this your signature along with Mr. Hoag's signature on the accusation?
It is. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true. In the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those failures of mine, Your Honor, I have taken responsibility already before the Colorado bar who censured me, and I now take responsibility before this court and apologize to the people of Georgia.
Wow. If I knew what I knew then, I wouldn't have been Trump's lawyer. And what I find interesting, and I'm going to be called sexist here, and I'm ready for this. Cancel me, because I'm sure it's coming. But this is kind of the but I'm a girl defense. I was just getting coffee. I didn't know any better. I'm just this isn't my fault. No, this is your fault. And I know she's taking responsibility for it, but with a sweetheart deal. She got the sweetheart deal. And it's amazing how many people in Trump's sphere were just people getting him coffee. I didn't think he drank coffee. I thought everything was Diet Coke. I thought everything was Diet Coke. I didn't realize that Donald Trump drank coffee. Maybe it was for everybody else. Maybe it was for Rudy because he was drunk all the time. I don't know. But it's interesting to see the very best people now coming out and being forgotten by Donald Trump. Sidney Powell, she did some gymnastics, and Trump came out and said, "Wow, she was never my lawyer. She was just getting me coffee." And I find it very interesting that all of these people now, who were the very best people, remember, he only surrounds himself with the very best people. And they all seem to be turning on him. And what I love from right-wing media, because I've been consuming a lot of it lately, is how they're defending their martyr, how they're circling the wagons. The Justice Department, they're biased. They've weaponized law, and the courts are all biased, and the courts are out to get him. No, your guy just messed up. Your guy broke a lot of laws. Guy did a lot of things. And now finally someone is going, we're going to hold you responsible. This whole trying to overthrow the government thing, this is a big freaking deal. And it's the overt acts. And, he was just asking for a recount. If you believe that, I've got bridges for sale. And the ones that don't collapse, ever. It's remarkable to me at how the cult convinces themselves that he was entirely right to bring thousands of people to Washington, D.C. with the sole intent to stop the certification of the election. That's why they were there. Never forget. That's why they were all called there. We're going to stop the steal, because they all con their people into believing that the election was rigged. You know, I had a guy email me and say, you're going to want to know this fact because this fact is really important. It's eye-opening. Did you know that Donald Trump won the in-person vote in every single state in this country? He won the vote. And you go, yeah, he did. He won the vote with people who showed up on that Tuesday. Yeah, he did. That was the scheme from the beginning, because everyone knew that Democrats were voting by mail. Everyone knew that the mass of the vote was going to be done by mail. Because the Democratic Party said, hey, don't make yourself sick. Don't get anyone else sick. Vote in a safe fashion by mail. And again, we haven't found the massive frauds that the Sidney Powells and the Rudy Giulianis and the rest of the kook squad, said it was. We've got the facts. Except they never took those facts into a courtroom. And I find it interesting that the right-wing outrage machine conveniently forgets that fact. Now, to the guy's point of Donald Trump won every single state with the in-person vote. He forgets to mention that Joe Biden won every single state with the mail-in vote, because for the first time in ever, I voted by mail. Because of I didn't want to get into what I thought was going to be long lines of people coughing on each other, and then be 6 feet apart, and it just seemed simpler to me. And I love the idea of voting by mail. I love the fact that I don't have to plan to be in a certain place at a certain time on a certain Tuesday to get home from work and quick shower and eat and go, yeah, I don't want to have to do that. I want to go, oh, yeah, I'm going to make my choices and I'm going to mail it in. And then they're going to mail me back things that, hey, we got your ballot. It's been counted. This is the thing, again, the right-wing outrage machine doesn't want you to know. In my state, they sent me the ballot, sent me an email to make sure I got it. I sent it back. They sent me an email saying, hey, we got it. We got it. We got your thing. And then when it was counted, they sent me an email and said, hey, just wanted to let you know. It's been counted. And I know. But Rick, you're the exception, not the rule. No, I was the rule. Amazing how well they did this. Amazing how quickly the system worked. And now you're seeing Republicans coming around to the idea of going, hey, we should do mail-in voting. And they're now coming around to promoting mail-in ballots because, they're finally realizing, one, there wasn't the fraud that they're claiming. All of this stuff that Trump spewed, all the stuff that these people who are crying, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know better, I was just getting coffee, they knew better. And the people who were advising Trump knew better. And we're going to see these lawyers come, sit on the stand, and tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help them prison. They don't care about God. They don't care about that. They care about prison. And that's what these people are doing. The rats are jumping ship. The rats are finding safe haven, and I'm going to cover my behind. And this is something that a guy who demands loyalty like Trump is going to have a real difficult time with, because Jenna Ellis was close to him. Mark Meadows was his chief of staff, was close to him. Sidney Powell. I'm waiting for, I said this the other day. I'm waiting for Rudy Giuliani to flip, but I got to be honest. I don't know that anyone's offered him anything, because I think they want to make him an example. And also, I don't think he would take the plea, because probably he's going to need a place to stay after he's done. Because everyone who stands by Trump broke, screwed. Now, I've had people go, well, do you see any way that Trump gets out of this? I do, actually. I do think that there could be some red hats out there that work their way onto the jury and gum up the system. I do see that possible. And if that is the case, he will be able to play the martyr for another couple of cycles. The scary part here is he could still be president. And I know a lot of my Democratic leaning friends are like, no, there's no way. Joe Biden's going to win. I don't know. And look, I know a lot of my Democratic friends who they hope that Trump is the candidate, because it's probably the only person that Biden can beat. And that's my opinion more than anybody else's. I think Biden would have a much more difficult time with any other Republican. I think the one he can beat is Trump, and I think that's the one he wants. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got lots to get to and talk about right back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1940. That was the day that the federally mandated 40-hour work week went into effect for U.S. workers. The 40-hour week had been passed as part of the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. Making 5 days of 8 hours work the national standard had long been a top goal for labor. For decades, union members organized, demonstrated, went on strike, and even died for the right to work 8 hours. Labor argued that reducing the long, unregulated hours of toil was a matter of workers' health and safety. It was also a matter of dignity. A more reasonable work week would give workers the time to spend with their families, to pursue other interests, and to have a full life outside of the grinding schedule demanded by many bosses. Before the turn of the 20th century, the 8-hour day movement declared 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will as their motto. In 1886, nationwide rallies and strikes for 8 hours took place on May 1st. Today, May Day is celebrated as a workers' holiday around the world in remembrance of that struggle. In 1888, the American Federation of Labor took up the cause, and the Carpenters Union became the standard bearer for the 8-hour day. 10 years later, the United Mine Workers Union members won the 8-hour workday. In 1916, the Adamson Act made 8 hours the standard for interstate railroad workers. A decade after that, Ford Motor Company, a leader in U.S. industry, established the 40-hour work week. Each of these victories were a step along the way to making the 8-hour day a reality and the law of the land. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
There is nothing quite as pitiful as whiny billionaires, and the whiniest of all is the richest, Elon Musk. This self-entitled bully runs over anyone in his way, then whines when they protest. Elon's latest high-pitched screech was prompted by public demands that his profiteering schemes obey clean water and safety regulations. He owns a corporation named, believe it or not, the Boring Company, an underground tunneling venture based in Bastrop, Texas, digging out tons of soil, chemicals, and contaminated groundwater. But where to put all the waste? I'll just dump the stuff in the nearby Colorado River, said Lord Musk. Lots of stuff, 140,000 gallons of wastewater per day. But that river is our main water source, said local people. You'll need to comply with water treatment and disposal rules. Outrageous, whined Elon, maniacally squealing that construction is becoming practically illegal in America. So he proceeded to dump his waste without a permit. Then he encountered Chap Ambrose, a boring neighbor and former Musk admirer. Chap began asking questions and getting nothing but evasions, lies, and disrespect. Musk was messing with Texas, so Ambrose rallied local opposition through a website he named Keep Bastrop Boring. With a drone, he videoed Musk's expanding industrial mess, broadcasting the videos throughout the area. He filed actions with county, state, and national regulatory authorities and got his state senator to hold a hearing attended by hundreds of residents in this rural county. Musk can bamboozle powerful officials, but not feisty people like Chap, who recently ridiculed the pouty billionaire. Development remains legal in Bastrop, Ambrose told him, but what is illegal is polluting Texas water. You're making this way harder than it has to be. This is Jim Hightower saying the fight goes on, and I'm betting on Chap.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently, federal agents found more than 24 miners, not coal miners, but miners, kids, illegally working at a poultry plant in Kidron, Ohio. And are you surprised by that? No, because we've talked about the story that the poultry industry, the packing industry, probably wouldn't be as profitable without as many kids working in them doing dangerous jobs. And again, this is another one of those moments where we're finally starting to pay attention to the horrible that is child labor and our return to the good old days. You know, when we got those kids back in the mines, got them back in the looms, got them back doing factory work. They got little hands. They can do intricate work. At least one party believes that, and it, as we've been saying, is the Republican Party. And here to share some thoughts on his most recent piece, GOP, when did you become the pro-child labor party, written by Timothy Noah. He is a staff writer over at The New Republic. Tim, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy doing your show.
So, we've been seeing these stories popping up, child labor violations on the rise. We've been seeing a whole bunch of this stuff, but it's really the Republicans who are trying to normalize and legalize what has been and hopefully will remain illegal acts.
Yeah, I mean, this is an actual vulnerability by in Joe Biden's administration, is that child labor violations keep rising and rising and rising, and the Republicans don't want to hit him for it. It's really weird. And but the reason they don't want to hit him for it is because they're in favor of child labor. They want more of it. They want to deregulate it. They don't especially mind that we're seeing a huge increase in child labor. We saw an increase 6 months ago. We saw another increase we learned about last week in the previous fiscal year.
No, it's amazing to me. But here's the thing. It's not new, Tim. I remember Newt Gingrich running for president a whole bunch of years ago and going, hey, we get rid of those union janitors. We put those kids to work cleaning the bathrooms. We could save a bunch of money and teach those poor kids a little work ethic, help them pull themselves up by the bootstraps.
What's different is it in those days, it was understood to be something crazy that Republicans said every now and then. Now it's gone completely mainstream. You've got states passing laws deregulating child labor, and you've got laws cropping up in Congress, proposed laws introduced by Republicans. You've also got Democrats proposing all sorts of laws intended to, try and get our arms around this problem and address it. And very few Republicans are willing to sign on to that. There's a child labor, I forget what it's called, basically a child labor caucus, and there aren't any Republicans who want to join it.
But here's the thing. Tim. Why do we need a child labor caucus? This is the 21st century. I thought we got out of 19th century thinking.
I know. I mean, it's really bizarre. And it was about 100 years ago, a little longer, when this first became an issue at the national level. And then during the New Deal, we passed the Fair Labor Standards Act, right, which imposed some strict regulations. And these are the regulations that we're finding violations of left and right. And Congress won't give the Labor Department enough money to enforce the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Now, we can pass laws, but there are no teeth in the enforcement. What does it matter? Now, here's the thing that I've been saying, and I don't know if you'll agree or disagree. But I've been saying, look, the Republicans, they're the party of cheap labor. They're the party of big business. They need to get cheap labor into the workforce and to do some of these dangerous jobs that a lot of people have, a lot of Americans don't want to do. And, the children that are working in these meatpacking plants, on these farms, in these tobacco plants, these aren't kids that look like mine. These are poor immigrant kids. These are poor minority kids. People that, this is giving them a pathway to the American dream. But it's not going to be people like my kids that are going to suffer on this. And I think that's why it's been so tolerated and why it's palatable to a lot of Republican voters.
Right. They're not like us. And I mean, what's happened is the arrival of unaccompanied minors into the United States, combined with a tight labor market, has just made child labor way too tempting for slaughterhouses, for chicken processors, all kinds of factories that are fully aware of the fact that they're breaking the law when they put these kids in these positions, and they expect to get away with it. There was the New York Times. There's a wonderful reporter at the New York Times who I think should win a Pulitzer for the really magnificent reporting she's produced over the past few months on this problem. She wrote about a slaughterhouse in Virginia where there was this kid from Guatemala who
lost an arm.
Well, he didn't lose it, but it got mangled in a machine.
Yeah.
And the by law, the plant has to call that in to the regulator. And in Virginia, they have a Virginia OSHA, so you call it into the Virginia OSHA. And the regulator in Virginia said, well, you guys, why don't you guys just do a self inspection on this one and let me know. That.
And that's how this problem gets swept under the rug. And look, I would argue it's probably because they don't have the people to come out and do it.
Is that nobody ever asked, how old was this kid?
Right.
Like the first question you ask.
Well, because I got to think that, they're thinking that, the companies are going to police themselves. They don't want to be exposed to, the fines and all kinds of stuff, even though the fines, we both know, are pathetically low. Right. If you pass laws that said, hey, if you hire a child that gets killed on the job or maimed or injured, the CEO goes to jail, I guarantee you there are no more kids getting hired into these dangerous jobs.
That's right. And the other way the reputational hit is managed is through what David Weil, who was who ran the Wage and Hour Division under Obama, and was nominated to run it again, and couldn't get confirmed in the Senate, which was a whole other disgrace because he's a good man. But anyway, Weil wrote a book about called The Fissured Workplace, where he talked about how the way it works now is if you have a name brand company like Purdue, and they have a factory. A chicken slaughterhouse, they don't want to hire the people who go work there. They give that job to a contractor,
right,
that nobody's ever heard of. So when the contractor gets nailed, there's no particular reputational loss to the contractor. The contractor's small, doesn't have a reputation.
They file bankruptcy tomorrow, they change their name, they start all over again.
And Purdue, meanwhile, says, we had no idea, we were appalled. Of course, how do you get that contract from Purdue? With the low bid.
Right. And this is where, again, I come back to the idea that if we're going to reunite this country, we've got to reunionize. If we're going to keep children safe, we got to reunionize this country. Now, look, I'm not against kids working in jobs that do teach them, about the value of $1. And, my kids have been working since they were 15. My son's been a lifeguard. My daughter worked, as a hostess at a restaurant. There were jobs that teach them, how to show up on time, how to be, a good, diligent worker, how to save. And there are good things, good qualities to work that we want to encourage. I don't know about, working in a meat packing plant, working in a sawmill, and some
working
of the
construction. What's the kid doing working overnight? He's supposed to be in school the next day.
Exactly.
It's obviously, it's not the fact that kids work, but it's the fact that the Republicans want kids to work in more dangerous jobs. They want kids to be working longer hours. They want kids to be working nighttime hours. I mean, it's absurd. There have been all these laws that have been passed at the state level, and most of them are really appalling. There's one that I don't especially object to, which is in New Jersey, they wanted to lengthen the number of hours, allowable work hours during the summer vacation. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But most of these laws are really, I think, a threat to health and safety.
Well, what it's doing is it's the Republican mantra of the corporations will act in their best interest. So they'll police themselves, Timothy. They're not going to do anything that, like, as you pointed out, damage their brand. No, right. They're good corporate citizens, and they're going to do what's right. And we know time after time after time after time that they don't. They do what's in their best interest. Their best interest of the bottom line and the profits that they put in their pocket. Kids be damned, workers be damned, rules be damned. It's all about the buck.
And they also, but they've also added this new trick that Weil talks about, where they avoid accountability through contracting out, as much low wage labor.
And also, it makes it that much harder to unionize because you just don't use that contractor anymore. And
right.
Next, and it's another way to get around that, which is why, again, we need a major overhaul of our labor laws to address these kind of things that corporate America has put into place.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a genius to figure out these ruses, but you do need an alert government to follow these developments and protect workers.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Timothy Noah. He's a staff writer over at the New Republic. If you want to check out his piece, GOP, when did you become the pro-labor party? We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. But here's the thing, and this is where I want to kind of wrap this into. I had a friend who's a state legislator out in Iowa. He goes to a construction site, and there are kids working on the construction site. I mean, it's become so prevalent now that you can stumble on it in a lot of places. What's it going to take for parents like me, for people who don't want to see children exploited, and what's it going to take for us to stop this ball that's funded by the Coke machine, that's funded by big money? What's it going to take for us to stop it?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, this really is the kind of thing that I thought would never come back. I really thought those were the bad old days and they're gone forever. I was taught that in school. And they are coming back, and no one seems to care.
Yeah.
I think, sort of publicizing it has to become a big story. And again, I applaud the New York Times for dedicating the resources it has, but it can't just be the New York Times. It's got to be everybody, because it's happening everywhere.
No, and it's why we've talked about it so much here on the program. And I look at Iowa. Iowa had one of the most egregious clauses in their basically repeal of their child labor law, to where you're going to turn work into an apprenticeship program, and the companies aren't liable for anything that happens to the kids while they're on this apprenticeship program. And so basically if a kid gets hurt, maimed, killed, whatever, basically nobody's accountable, and the kid's just out of luck. And you go, how is that sane? How is that rational? But
right.
You've got crazy people running Iowa.
Right. And you also hear a lot of pious talk by Republicans about how this shouldn't be entirely up to the parents. And that really is what they said 100 years ago. Yep. I mean, it should really be up to the parents, and the reformers said no, it shouldn't be entirely up to the parents, because a lot of parents are sending their kids out to work
because they don't have a choice. I mean, this is, again, I come back to, we've got poverty in this country where people are desperate. Look, if everybody had a living wage job, and everybody was somewhere in the same world financially, fine. Parents I can make decisions for my kids, and I believe I will make the right ones, because our lives aren't dependent on them bringing money home to keep a roof over our head or food on the table. But when that's the reality of a family where they need that third or fourth income, that's a problem.
Right. That's why you need to bring in another actor. You do need to bring in the state to look out after the interests of the child. The common law of 100 years ago, it's really interesting, was sort of based on some English constitutional law that basically said a child is the possession of the father. It was a child was like a mule or an enslaved person. I mean, it was unbelievable, and the law has progressed quite a lot since then. And there's some risk that we're now returning to that grotesque standard.
It is crazy times. And again, as I say all the time, Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do. That is the sad reality. But Timothy, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Great piece. Hope people will take a look at it. GOP, when did you become the party? The pro-labor, or the pro-child labor party, written by Timothy Noah. He's a staff writer over at the New Republic. Timothy, I appreciate the time, man. Great stuff.
Thank you, Rick.
Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day that the first minimum wage law went into effect in the United States. The first minimum wage was 25 cents an hour. The wage law was part of the Fair Labor Standards Act passed earlier that year. The act also included a mandate for a 40-hour work week and restrictions against child labor. Raising the minimum wage is one of the great political battles being fought by labor today. Since 1968, the minimum wage has not kept up with inflation. It has lost 1/3 of its value. Not coincidentally, the top 1% of the wealthiest people in the United States have seen their share of the nation's economy double from 11% in 1968 to 22% in 2012. In January of 2014, 600 leading economists, including 7 Nobel Peace Prize winners, wrote an open letter to Congress and the President. They urged for the passage of an increase in the minimum wage. The letter explained, in recent years, there have been important developments in the academic literature on the effect of increases in the minimum wage on employment. With the weight of evidence now showing that increases in the minimum wage have little or no effect on the employment of minimum wage workers, even during times of weakness in the labor market, research suggests that a minimum wage increase could have a small stimulative effect on the economy as low-wage workers spend their additional earnings, raising demand and job growth, and providing some help on the jobs front. The 1938 minimum wage law was passed at the height of the Great Depression. Labor was on the march for economic justice and fair working conditions. What will it take today to get our elected officials to raise the wage? Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Remember, if you miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast. Always there, always available. And look, subscribe to the podcast. We want to make sure that when we, on December 1st, when we leave radio, and this could be short term, could be long term. We don't know yet. There's some things in the works that I'm excited about. The future going to be very bright, I think. And look, I've gotten a lot of response, and thank you. I'm feeling the love. And I appreciate that. The folks saying, it's sad to see you go. But, this is one of those positive moves that I think is going to give us the ability to really target on the stuff that we want to work on, going to free us up from, being locked to a studio, get us out and talking to people and do some projects that I'm really excited about. There's some real optimism here about this move, and we're working with various stations to simulcast the TV show, and if there's some interest in that, we're looking forward. So we're not going to go away entirely. You'll still be stuck listening to us on some level, and I know that makes some people very happy and some very sad, and tough on you. But no, this is a good thing, but like I said, I appreciate everyone reaching out. And I got a lot of, hey, are you okay? And yeah, I'm fine. I'm great. This is going to be a good thing. Going to help us, like I said, get out of the studio a little bit. I've got lots of, next summer looks like what we're planning, an excellent opportunity to get out and really get our hands dirty. And then bring back some great content. But if you don't follow Free Speech TV, that's where we're heading. Freespeech.org is the website. It's in, I think they're saying 65, 70 million homes across the country. If you don't have if your cable provider doesn't get it, it's streamed virtually everywhere. So it's literally in every home in the country. This gives us the opportunity to really expand our reach and to organize. As an organizer at heart, this is an incredible tool to help us reach into people's homes and grab them and say, hey, it's time to reunite this country. It's time to bring us together. It's time to reunionize this country. It's time to share the pie a little bit more equally, and it's about making lives better. So I'm really excited. But again, thank you to everyone who has sent well wishes and good thoughts. I'm happy. I'm happy. And look, I think it's a testament to the 18 years that we've been here on the radio, and the relationships that we've built over the years. And look, we're not going away. I hope everyone who emails us will continue. I hope the conversations continue. because it's really, really good stuff that I think is coming along down the pike. But here's the thing, and this is where I think the kind of show that we do and what we want to be doing is going to bring people in. Because look, the latest Pew Research poll out said that in 2016, 51% of U.S. adults said that they followed the news all or most of the time. That number has fallen down to 38%. That means things are, people are staying away from, the corporate media. They're looking for other alternative and other sources, and I want us to be part of that. So we're going to be putting out the TV show, a daily podcast, specifically for podcast. Quick in. We're looking at doing like a 10-minute. Here's the top stories of the day. Quick in and out. Helps you get the basic stuff you need, and then a 30-minute, whatever it is that I'm working on that day. And plus the TV show. That'll give you an opportunity to stay engaged, stay active with the program, and for us to interact. And I think that's going to be fabulous. I want to finish up with one story that has me particularly upset. Comes out of Virginia. The Republican Party of Virginia evidently mailed out thousands of explicit flyers about this Suzanne Gibson. You may know about Suzanne Gibson's story. Her and her husband were engaging in marital discourse online for money, had followers, had people directing. There's a lot of that's evidently the new thing. She's being shamed for this. What I find interesting is the very people who say you should get married and stay married and raise the kids and family matters, and I find it interesting that they're the ones pointing their finger, going, well, that's bad. Hey, they're staying together. And at a time when marriages are breaking up at an alarming rate and people are running away from it, Republicans should be grabbing onto this. In fact, most of the guys should be going, hey, how do you keep that going? Maybe we get a channel that nobody's going to watch. But evidently they sent out this flyer with lots of very coarse language and this woman's picture and all kinds of stuff, and in an envelope that says, don't open if you're under the age of 18. Explicit material enclosed. And I got to tell you, the first thought that I had, and it's been a long time since I've been under 18. I remember going, if someone said don't, I would say, oh yeah, there's no way that I'm not. And, I'm smart enough and always was smart enough to be able to open that stuff without anybody ever knowing. Because I'm good like that. In fact, my kids, all the years that they were losing teeth and the tooth fairy would come and bring them money. Because what my wife used to do is have them color an envelope and, put a note in the envelope with the tooth, and then they would lick it and seal the envelope closed. And, we would get it and open the envelope and put the money in, take the tooth, and they never knew how you could get into the sealed envelope. Well, all you need is a teapot. So anyone with a teapot could be looking at the explicit material that I, as a 13-year-old, would have certainly opened without question, because, well, that was me. And I think any 13-year-old, especially a 13-year-old boy, if you say do not, they will absolutely. So, but this is what they sent out. They sent all this stuff out, and it's really kind of nasty. In fact, this is the weird part. In fact, when the news station went to a Republican event, a lot of Republicans were actually uncomfortable with it. So there's hope. There's possible hope here that maybe we found the bounds of too far. Now, will these Republicans who found the bounds too far, will they hold the Republican candidate responsible for this? Who knows? We'll see. The election's just a couple of days away. But this is a race that I'm going to keep an eye on. It's a House seat in Virginia. Will be interesting. But there's no depths that they won't go to. There's no decency level anymore. And remember, Republicans tell us they're the party of family values. Explain to me again how sending illicit pictures to people's homes via the mail is, the paragon of family values. It's not. And I got to wonder if it's illegal. this kind of stuff shouldn't be tolerated. Maybe there ought to be a law. And maybe someone from the Republican Party of Virginia should get a set of shiny bracelets. Or more likely, more in my world, a beating. I know you're not allowed to say that, Rick. Oh, but when I was younger, that's what you got. As my grandfather always said, somebody's got to make a citizen out of them. Somebody should make a citizen out of them. Again, want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Never miss a minute. Grab the podcast. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.